A recurring topic of discussion in the BP community is the importance of having low social inhibition for socializing and attracting romantic partners. You need to be low inhib, bro.
We can both agree, this is a black-pilled concept here, that people with low inhibition, given that everything else is equal, people with low inhibition will outperform people with high inhibition.
In the BP community, a low inhibition personality is almost always spoken about positively, and a high inhibition personality is almost always spoken about negatively. It's advantageous to be low inhib, so why are some people high-inhib? Such a terribly unfortunate affliction, right?
And you might say, well, that's unfair.
It may be so in modern society, but there's a genetic component to having a lower inhib or a higher inhib personality, and there's a good reason why there is this variation among people's inhibition levels.
Where you land on those dimensions is determined to a large degree by the genetic lottery. And now there's some movement on each dimension that can occur as a consequence of socialization, but it's bounded by the place you landed when the cards were dealt, by the genetic code when you were born. It's not unfair exactly, it's just, there's a randomness about it within a bounded world. It's not unfair partly because every advantage comes with a disadvantage. So if you're extroverted, you're social and you're positive, but you're impulsive and you can tilt towards hedonism and you can't stand being alone. If you're high neuroticism, well, you suffer a lot of anxiety and pain, but you're pretty sensitive to threat and you might see danger before anyone else does, and then you don't die. And maybe your children don't either. Some children by, let's say 2, although you can actually measure this by 6 months. So imagine you have a child in a room, lab, and his or her mother is there, and the mother is sitting and the child's here, and then a little wheeled robot is remote controlled in by the experimenter. Well, some kids will just run right over and engage with the robot, and other kids will hide behind their mother and then sort of peek out. And the ones who hide are higher in negative emotion. And then if it's a baby-eating robot, they're not dead. So that's their strategy, whereas hey, your kids are going to go play with a strange dog at the playground, or not, and sometimes that's real fun, and sometimes it's no fun at all, and sometimes it's the, kid who's hiding behind his mother's legs that doesn't have his face torn off by the pit bull. So there's variability for a reason.
You can imagine in prehistoric natural settings how having high inhib could be just as good as having low inhib, and having variation of inhib between different people benefits everyone. Let's say in a group of foragers looking for food to eat, there's someone whose inhib level is higher than average and someone whose inhib level is lower than average. The group comes across a kind of berries they haven't seen before. The low inhib guy might want to try eating them. If the berries are not poisonous, then the low inhib guy's willingness to take the risk helped the tribe find out that these berries are a viable source of food, reducing the tribe's chances of starving. If the berries are poisonous, the low inhib guy might die, but he took one for the team, so to speak, and now the tribe knows what this type of berry does. The high inhib guy can caution the rest of the group to warn them of the potential dangers, raising their chances of survival right now if they don't eat the berries. But maybe they miss out on a potentially good source of nutrients by following the high inhib guy's advice. Nowadays, in developed places, it's less useful to be high inhib because there's no risk of getting your face mauled off by a tiger if you wander off into the woods. Instead, we have cities paved with concrete, boulevards full of bright, colorful neon lights, unlike anything prehistoric humans saw at nighttime in the savannah, and concerts and clubs that are way louder than anything they heard before, packed with way more people than they ever saw, with different social dynamics than they had. It makes total sense, evolutionarily, why the stimuli of the nightclub would trigger a nervous, cautious, threat-aware response in higher inhib people. We aren't naturally adapted to cold approaching in a loud-ass crowd full of strangers, and that's a challenge for high inhib people. Low inhib thrives in this environment, not giving a fuck and just going all out. Low inhib utterly mogs high inhib at parties, bars, clubs, school dances, and the like. So I think that on average, it's advantageous to have low inhib, but the BP community doesn't seem to talk about the disadvantages of being low inhib and the harms that come from lowering your inhib too much.
Every advantage comes with a disadvantage.
No one in the BP mentions the guys who died because they got behind the wheel when they were intoxicated. What about the STDs and unwanted pregnancies that occurred when the low inhib moggers who got laid didn't have enough inhib to use protection? A low inhib guy and a high inhib guy go to a party and someone offers them cocaine, which neither of them have done before. The high inhib guy declines, "Nah, I'm good." The low inhib guy says, "Hey, why the hell not?" and does a line of coke. Chances are he'll be fine, but there's a chance he'll end up in the hospital or die from overdosing overdosing, having an adverse reaction to it, getting laced with fentanyl or another contaminant, or getting injured from something impulsive he does while he's high. The high-inhib guy missed out on a possibly fun experience, but he chose what's best for his health and safety. And what about a low-inhib guy who goes out to the bar and drinks alcohol until his inhib gets a bit too low for his own good? He says something way too forward to a woman, her boyfriend who's also low-inhib confronts him aggressively, and being the low-inhib guy he is, he doesn't de-escalate, he just jumps right into a fight, ends up with a broken nose and a broken wrist, which obviously is extremely painful and also will cost him financially with the medical bills he's gonna have. If you're a high-inhib person, at least you're unlikely to have these kinds of problems in your life. Again, I think that on average, it's generally advantageous to have a low-inhib personality. The exception to this is if you're neurodivergent, or non-NT, which is the preferred slang term in the BP community. Depending on how your non-NTness manifests in your social behaviors, it may be better for you to have high inhibition. The other day, I was on campus chatting about a group project with fellow students, and there was a guy acting super outgoing and was clearly non-NT. He was out there holding the door for people and saying stuff like, "Have a nice day," but his demeanor was just so weird. Then he approached me and asked me about a specific model of heater he's trying to repair. Like, he just walked up to me and started talking about the manual of an obscure appliance. And I'm like, what the fuck? This guy was so low inhib and outgoing, but he's utterly incompatible with normies. I just felt bad for him. I know what it's like to be awkward and make social faux pas. I have some neurodivergent traits myself, but that guy had it orders of magnitude harder than me. It's sad to see someone who's trying to put himself out there failing socially because of something out of his control. And it's even harder for neurodivergent people who live in areas where people are less accepting and more hostile. If a guy in the hood walked up to strangers acting the way he did, someone might have a violent reaction to him. Fortunately, he was on a college campus during the day where it's pretty safe. But man, it's rough out there for neurodivergent people.